Hello, good evening to you, if that's the part of the world you're in. Nice to see you. This is Tad. It is in California anyway. It is 7 p.m. Sunday night, the 8th, 9th, 29th, May the 29th. And I'm very glad to be here. And I will mention going in, this may be the last time I'm here for at least a week or two, because we finished Otherland last night on the morning, the early morning reading. So I'm going to read something else tonight, something you haven't heard, at least read by me before, although it is one of mine. And then I'm going to take a little time off while I figure out what to do next with this whole broadcasting slot, whatever you want to call it. Before you guys all find other things to do with your Sunday mornings and Sunday evenings, which I know you will. I know you will, you wicked little people. You're going to run out and go, well, Tad's not here anymore. We're going to find something better to do anyway. And I'm sure there are 1,000 better things to do than sit here listening to me. But I don't want to lose it, and I don't want to lose you. So bear with me. It won't be long. I'll keep you apprised online of what's happening. And then we can go forward with whatever we're going to do next, and that will be fun. We'll find something fun to do. So yes, here I am, the large pink person in stripes. That sounds like a Noel Fielding character. Anyway, some of you may not know who Noel Fielding is, and if so, I'm very, very sorry for you. Noel Fielding and Julian Barrett are two of my favorite people. And they did The Mighty Boosh along with Rich Fulcher and Michael Fielding and some other folks. And Noel has had his own series, and I've seen him live. And anyway, those of you who like absurd comedy definitely need to check out the works of Fielding and Barrett, and especially The Mighty Boosh, which was a brilliant, wonderful, absurdist show. My favorite kind of comedy, dating all the way back to my youthful infatuation with Monty Python and Dada and all kinds of other things. So as usual, I have drifted slightly afield. What I am going to do tonight, I'm going to read a short story. That's one of the things I haven't read to you guys before. And the reason I haven't read it is because most of you will not be familiar with the milieu, but I'll explain that when I get to it. But I don't think you need to be to appreciate it as a story, and I think there's enough entertaining stuff that happens in it that it won't be a problem. And if there is, what can you do? I'm going to be done for a little while. It was fun and weird finishing the first Otherland book last night. I, of course, as usual, I always feel like, oh my God, I'm going to run out early, and then what am we going to do? I'm going to have to either kill time or just quit early. And I didn't get started till like 20 after with the actual reading last night, and then wound up going till almost quarter past to get the whole last section of Otherland finished. So those of you who are interested in that, of course, can, if you haven't already, can find it on either Chris Fab's YouTube channel, or you can go look at on my social media accounts on Facebook and Twitter and be connected to those. So it's out there. So if you are pining for the ending of the first Otherland novel, that's where it can be found. Let me think if there's anything else to mention. No, I was talking last week about how I had been much, much healthier and happier, and same is still true. I am extremely relieved that what was going on did not turn out to be the new normal, or at least it doesn't seem to be the new normal. And I seem to be back to my normal old grouchy, emphasize old and grouchy self, but not physically as inhibited as I was. I say this with no negativity meant to people who struggle with these things, struggle with issues of acceptability and mobility all the time. There are a lot of people out there. And, I generally, although I have some issues and always have, I am always hesitant to talk about them much, just because they don't compare to what a lot of people have to go through every day just as a part of life. So although it was a worrisome time for me because I am the person who has to be able to work for our family to be able to eat. I at least can continue to work. So nobody is going to starve on my watch. Everybody seems to be fine. Um, Dog and pet news, very minimal. Johnny has not found a way out through the fence again, so that seems to have been a success. That was the first thing I did after I got a shot in my wrist and muscle relaxants, and I was kind of back to about 90% of normal as I had went out and climbed the hill and found the hole in the fence, which we'd already tried to fix once, and fixed it, and at least for now seems to be holding up. So that is a good thing. Johnny immediately returned to the house and began sulking instead of taking advantage of his new freedom. It's as if he knew that his chance to truly escape and start a new job or start a new life for himself as a roving hobo dog or whatever he had planned had ended. He's by the way, Big Dog Johnny is very ambivalent about freedom because on the one hand, he has this sort of remorseless desire to get out, and on the other hand, he when he's out, he's not happy. He's not happy, and he actually once got hit by a car being driven by one of our neighbors in our kind of tiny little road. So fortunately, she was not going very fast, although he had to go to the dog hospital and all kinds of things like that and get shaved and stitched and etc. He was basically okay, no permanently broken bones or anything. But so he's always very ambivalent. So, he doesn't even like to go out on a leash past the spot where he got hit by the car, although he'll run out and risk the same thing happening to him again. So dogs, what are you going to do? Anyway, before I start explaining the thing I'm going to read and start reading, and I will finish the story tonight. I have no idea how long it's going to take. It's really hard to tell with these things. But before I do, I am going to check in and say hello to the folks who are here, or at least who have signed up and said hello. And first off, Jared. Hello, Jared. Good to see you. And yes, I'm having a good weekend so far and have actually gotten things done that needed to get done. And that is always a good feeling. So Medardo says, happy to be here once again for the Hour of the Tale. And good. Well, I hope you like it. This will not be Otherland, as I mentioned, but it's still an interesting and I think entertaining story. So we will continue on. Who else is here? Kristen. Whoops, here I lost you there, Kristen. Kristen, hello. Good to see you. Claudia, hello, hello. Good evening. Kelly, good evening. And the family and I are well. Everybody at the moment is healthy. Nobody is suffering. And I just was talking with my mom on the phone, which is always a nice thing to do, especially when we haven't had a chance to talk lately. And she and my dad seem to be doing well, which is always a good thing and makes me feel looser and happier because they're getting on now. They are older adults. I think it's safe to say, oh, you can look at me. And even though I'm the oldest, you can guess that my parents are getting on, but they're in good health and good spirits, and they're fun, smart people. So it was nice to talk to them. So anyway, so yes, the whole family, as far as I know, as well. Kristen, you are very welcome for all the readings. And it really is a two-way thing, because as I said before, I mean, what I could be sitting around reading this to myself, and instead during the pandemic, it felt like a good thing to do, just to be there and take up some time for people who were feeling housebound and wanted at least something else to add to their schedules to do. So I've been very pleased that people have enjoyed it. And, I don't take any special credit for it. It's not like I had to go anywhere. I'm just sitting in my messy downstairs office as usual. And the only difference is that occasionally I put on a clean shirt. So anyway, Tony says, oh, and as if perfectly timed, Tony says, awesome shirt. Thank you, Tony. Much appreciated. It was a present from Deb. As I said, pink creature, stripies. And who else we got? Barban, hello, good to see you. Jeremy. Jeremy says, hi, Tad. It seems to me that your shirt screams, so long, suckers, I'm going on vacation. It wasn't the intention. And in fact, I'm not going on an actual vacation, although I may be taking a vacation for a week or so from reading on Sundays. But it's not meant to be a long vacation. So, it didn't even occur to me. Maybe that was a subconscious manipulator. We writers know better than to doubt our own subconscious intentions, because when you write enough, you begin to see your own patterns, your own tropes, and your own subconscious seeping up from below, like the ooze in the Ninja Turtles movies or something. Not that I've ever seen an entire Ninja Turtles movie. And nothing against Ninja Turtles, mind you. I'm perfectly okay with Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles are fine. All turtles are fine with me. All turtles matter. And I hope that's clear. Okay, who else is here? Tim, hello, greetings. And Tim sends greetings and hope that everybody and their others, whether furry or not, are doing well. Who else we go? Cliff. Hello, Cliff. Best to you and the family also. Right back at you. Timothy, looking cheerful and tadsome as always. There, tadsome. There's an adjective that could cripple normal people. You've hung that around their necks. Oh my God, you're looking tadsome today. Anyway, thank you, Timothy. Very kind. Other Tim Speckens, could read Blue River of Blue Fire next. I understand that. Yeah, I'm kind of, these are long books. I'm not sure I can actually plan on devoting the next 2 years of my life or so to finishing the Otherland saga. I'd rather find something a bit more complicated. And if we have time tonight, I will talk about that at the end. Otherwise, we'll do it on my social media pages. Greg, good evening. Good evening. Nice to see you. Anthony, hello, hello. Just back from Japan. Excellent. That sounds really nice. I'd love to go to Japan someday. I mean, not just because of the difference in the culture and my fascination with how different people do things and what becomes normal and what is considered to be socially acceptable. And I mean, all those things, but also just Japan's a fascinating culture. My kids are obsessed with it. And I'd like to go to the Studio Ghibli Museum as well. So I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad you had a good time, it sounds like. So what else we got? Bill Dawson. Hello, Bill. Good to see you. Long time. Hope you're well. So no, Tim, my dog isn't going to start a California reboot of anything except possibly if there's any show that famously starred somebody who sits around looking really grumpy with everybody or sad, because my dog is very Eeyore-ish, even when he has no reason to be. It's funny that way. This is a dog that you'd think was just suffering the tortures of the damned all the time, just because he has those big, sad, evolutionarily designed eyes to make you feel guilty even when you've done nothing wrong, even after you've just given him a completely spontaneous treat for no reason other than just love. And then afterwards, he'll kind of go off to his beanbag or something, and then he'll sit there and he'll look at you like, "Is that all? Really?" Oh, and you're like, it was a free treat. For God's sakes, you have dinner in like half an hour. Just enjoy it. Oh, okay. He's very funny. Anyway, our daughter Devin does a really good version of Johnny's voice. So frequently, since I talk to the animals a lot, which, no surprise, I talk a lot, period. But I talk a lot to the animals just because that's my habit. And so frequently I won't even realize that Devin is in the room, and she'll be lying down on the couch or something, and I'll walk past and I'll say, "Johnny, I'm so sorry. I'll take you out very, very soon." And I'll hear this little voice going, "Are you sure? Really? Because you said that last time, and then I had to wait like 15 minutes. And for the first couple of words, I'm like, "Whoa, what happened?" And then I realize, oh, it's Devin talking for Johnny. Okay. Anyway, who else we got here? Annie, hello. Good evening, and hi to all at your house. Chris Vandal, good evening, good evening. Bill, you made a Ninja Turtles movie. Oh, you'll have to tell me about that. I didn't know about that. That's very cool. That is Turtles all the way down. Anyway, before it gets too late, let me start this story. I have no idea. I mean, it may wind up only taking 20 minutes or something, but this is out of the first collection I ever did, which is like a real omnibus in the classic sense of the word, right? Omnibus in the sense that it's just literally got everything, but the kitchen sink in it. The kitchen sink had to wait for Otherland, but it's got all kinds of different stuff. So, excuse me, let me quickly just read the introduction to this story because it explains a lot. And then if I have time, I may explain a little more. The story is called The Author at the end of time. Can you see how appropriate this is here? See me, I'm the author. We just finished a book. We're going to take a little time off. The author at the end of damn, I'm so smart. Anyway, this one definitely requires at least a little explanation. I wrote this story originally for a chapbook being put together to celebrate Michael Moorcock's 60th birthday. For those of you who don't know Mr. Moorcock's work, I have only this to say: you poor bastards. Mike invented Albino Elric and Tanalorn and Dorian Hawkmoon and the uber-cool data assassin Jerry Cornelius, and has had a greater effect on fantasy fiction than probably any writer in the last 100 years, except J.R.R. Tolkien. Among the works of his that I love best are the short stories and novels loosely grouped under the title The Dancers at the End of Time. The series of novels about these characters begins with An Alien Heat. Read them now. They are fabulous and hilarious and brilliant. I'll talk more about Moorcock and his effect on me in the intro to Go Ask Elric, which is also in this book, but which I read to you guys early in this cycle of pandemic readings. That's the one where a stoner version of myself from the 1970s winds up in an Elric story and then meets Jimi Hendrix. The following story is full of both the kind of jokes that Mike himself makes endlessly in his end-of-time stories, often based on the character's incomplete understanding of earlier ages of history, and a few It's Mike's Birthday jokes as well. That said, I think you can enjoy it without picking up every single reference. I had a grand time writing it, both in honoring a man whose work matters a lot to me, and getting to write a story in a universe I fell in love with when I was pretty much a kid. And I hope some of that quality shines through for all readers. Only other thing I'm going to say before I start is that the end of time, the basic premise of the end of time, is that at the end of time, which is, the sort of the last moments of the last, eons of intelligent life in the universe, or at least in the solar system, as Earth slowly falls apart, there are a few hundred people left alive, the end of time folks. And they live in a world where it's largely falling apart, except for the fact that they can make anything they want to, or make themselves anything they want to be, using the power of these last machines that are still working. And usually they have a ring or something to allow them to manipulate the power of the machines. So they're essentially magicians. But they're magicians at the end of time. They have nothing to do. They have no real direction. They're just a bunch of incredibly effete, distracted, slightly crazy people at the end of time. And, the history that we know is supposed to literally be thousands of generations in the past. They have only a very, very thin grasp of anything that happened, although they're fascinated by Earth history. And they are all quite strange, interesting characters who live basically to socialize and to make things. And that's what's going on with all of these characters. In the Alien Heat novels, the main character is one of the few true humans that's actually been born, who hasn't been created by other end-of-time dwellers, named Jarek Carnelian, and his mother, Iron Orchid, and then all of their friends and cronies and whatnot. So it's a bit like a royal court of crazy people at the end of time. So that's really all you need to know. And Michael Moorcock, of course, wrote the books, and he will make an appearance in this story. So, for reasons known only to herself, but much speculated upon by her friends, the Iron Orchid was conducting a sort of dalliance with Dr. Velospion. Many thought it the precursor to some elaborate and melodramatic act of revenge for Velospion's hostile behavior toward Lord Jagged of Canaria, one of Orchid's closest confidants, while others suspected there was nothing more complicated at work than the attraction of distaste, since virtually all attractions eventually have their fulfillment at the end of time. Whatever the case, it was this unlikely pairing that led to the Duke of Queens destroying most of Dr. Velospion's locusts, and thus perhaps precipitating some of the more interesting of the day's later events. Do you find the spiders satisfying? Dr. Velospion reached into the hamper and, with careful use of a pair of silver tongs, withdrew another sugared tarantula, its frosted legs kicking feebly. I think perhaps Argenhart Poe could have made them a bit more lively. The hill on which they sat, grey sedge shadowed by the grim heights of Castle Velospion, was surrounded by legions of albino locusts, which, as if in purposeful contrast to the somnambulant spiders, marched back and forth across one another vigorously, climbing and grabbing to create various structures of living white insecta. At the moment, several million of them had combined to create a standing and quivering statue of a hugely muscled woman in a scanty swimming costume, the goddess Venus Beach of ancient tradition. It is primarily taste that motivates dear Argenhart, not animation, replied the orchid. No, thank you, doctor, I am quite full. Who would ever think that a haunch of centipede would have so much meat on it? She patted at her stomach. Her gown of glittering magenta fish scales rattled slightly. A shadow passed overhead, darkening their picnic blanket. The distraction allowed a few of the sugared spiders to make a slow dash for freedom. Who is that? She stared as the gigantic air car swept past again, ears broadly extended to ride the wind, trunk extended and trumpeting loudly. Oh, look, it's some sort of elephant. It must be Abu Thaleb. No, said Velospion sourly. It is the Duke of Queens. As usual, he poaches on the aesthetic preserves of others. Hello, shouted the Duke, leaning over the side of the vast ebony vehicle. Hello, Iron Orchid, Dr. Velospion, exciting news. We wait breathlessly, called the orchid, laughing. Dr. Velospion looked perturbed. The Duke of Queens, who tended to favor somewhat unstable forms of transportation, brought his massive, shiny, black elephant flying car around in another broad swoop. The creature's ears spread even wider as it tried to slow itself down, but a miscalculation sent it plunging past the picnickers, trumpeting in terror and kicking its huge legs to crash and roll through the midst of the busy locusts with a drawn-out, wet, crunching noise. My insects! Hissed Velospion, rising. His eyes narrowed and his pale face became even paler as the distressed elephant slipped and skidded in the remains of the locust horde, trying to get to its feet. The Duke of Queens had been flung free and now came wading through a froth of crushed exoskeletons toward the picnic knoll. He was dressed as a circus ringmaster, but the hoops were showing a tendency to slide down to his ankles, making it even more difficult for him to walk. Terribly sorry, Velospion. It's very tricky to land that one. He looked back to where the monstrous black elephant, which had given up trying to rise, now lay with its legs in the air, chest heaving. Perhaps if I made the ears bigger. You are a fool, sir, Velospion said bitterly. I am. The Duke offered him a genteel and regretful bow. We thought you Abu Thaleb at first, the orchid smiled, amused as much by Velospion's dagger-eyed anger as by the Duke's landing. Famous for his pachydermal proclivities. Have you borrowed your air car from him? Oh, no, said the Duke. No, this is still part of my fascination with the Dawn Age, spawned in part by your clever son, Jarek, most beauteous of blossoms. My airship is absolutely authentic, a perfect replica of Jumbo Jet, the largest device of its kind. Even the ordure it excretes is authentic, packed in little trays with special utensils. You have ruined my locusts, sir. Dr. Velospion was visibly trying to regain his good temper, but perhaps not completely succeeding. Many hours of toil. But there it is. Ha! Yes, there it is. He showed the iron orchid a wintry smile before turning back to the Duke. Only the small-mindedness grudges, of course. This entrance of yours has a point. Ah, of course. A most exotic occurrence. A new time traveler has arrived. The Duke of Queens was momentarily distracted as his airship made a thrashing, bellowing attempt to rise. He is guest of honor at my Lady Charlatina's, and you are both invited. A time traveler. This is poor and common fare, said Velospion, still waspish, both figuratively and literally, since except for his angular white features, the rest of him was covered by a shining green-winged carapace. Ah, but not this time traveler, said the Duke. You see, he invented us. Velospion's smile was thin. So another messianic type. Tiresome. Oh, no. This one is different. The Duke's smile was wide and genuine. You really must meet him. We prefer to remain, Velospion began, but the Iron Orchid interrupted him. How charming! Of course we will join you, most dedicated of ducal lords. Ignoring Velospion's attempt to catch her eye, she glanced briefly at the great black elephant, which had clambered to its feet only to stumble again, trumpeting piteously. The creature's owner, his rings tangled, was not having much better luck getting up. I think perhaps we should take my airship, said the orchid. Isn't it all wonderful? Called Sweet Orb Mace as they alighted near Lake Billy the Kid. Her body, or his, for at the moment she was clearly and aggressively male, was naked to the waist, bulging with muscles. In one broad, knob-knuckled hand wobbled a long javelin made of shining gold, dripping with blood. We have all come as authors in honor of my Lady Charlatina's guest. And who are you? Smiled the Iron Orchid. Don't you know? Sweet Orb Mace seemed a little crestfallen. Only perhaps the greatest of the Dawn Age writers, Shakespeare, author of 1,000 hard-boiled romances, such as Romeo and Juliet and The Virgin of Venice. The rough-hewn features colored prettily. I consulted the cities. Have I got the details wrong? Of course not, boomed the Duke of Queens. You are most luridly authorial, most astonishingly hard-boiled. Writers, murmured Dr. Velospion. What folly! Yes, said Sweet Orb Mace happily. It is great fun, isn't it? Look, flying through the air, wearing the cape. That's Mistress Christia. She portrays Jane Austen, a superheroine who defended humankind's dark era in the name of pride, prejudice, and the American way, which was, I believe, a large and busy thoroughfare of some kind. And Ocala Incarnadine is Paddington Bear Bomb, dispenser of explosive epigrams. You can see that one went right off in the middle of the cake. Frosting everywhere. And Hector Jector Pachinko has come as the poet Frosting the Sandberg. But, someone has eaten his carrot nose. Poor Hector. I ask again, said Dr. Velospion, casting a cold eye over the various celebrants as they made their way toward the center of the fete, a mountainous tent that had been erected on the shore of the lake. Why exactly we should care about another babbling time traveler? The Duke of Queens was admiring my Lady Charlatina's tent, constructed in the shape of an antique object called a book, apparently some kind of tomb for authors, and thus the subject of much fixation among such types. Its spine looming high above the ground, flakes of gilt from the binding sifting down in a fine, dry rain. Because this author invented us. He swears it is so. Madness. Velospion flicked the fingers of a pale hand. The Duke shrugged. He knows many things about us. He regaled us earlier with stories and secrets that we thought we alone knew. Velospion turned almost imploringly to the Iron Orchid. Many people know about us. Dozens of visitors from other times had heard tales of our sublime age before they ever reached it in person. That does not prove him authentic. Is authenticity important? She asked with surprising gentleness. In any case, so most penetrating of practitioners, are you not generally fascinated by travelers of a metaphysical bent? Does it not interest you to meet someone who does not claim merely to know why we exist, but to actually have been the one responsible? I am interested in prophets and oracles, yes, allowed Velospion. But although my menagerie is vast, I have debunked many more than I have collected. I am not easy to impress. You will doubtless have an excellent time then, proving his claims false. Something in the Iron Orchid's tone made Velospion look at her sharply, but she had begun talking in an animated whisper with Sweet Orb Mace. Velospion adjusted his insect shell hood, preening the antennae back from his corpse-pale forehead, but said nothing more as they made their way along the lakeshore to the tent. Even by her generous standards, their hostess had outdone herself. The tables of food alone covered several acres. Red herrings, skewered on reviewers' barbs, sizzled over expanses of hot coals, and monstrous platters had been stacked high with half-baked plots, hoary wives' tales, licorice quips, and old chestnuts. Editorial assistants in gravy mewed piteously, treading on each other in a desperate attempt to keep their tiny heads above the surface of the steaming liquid in which they swam. High above all this plenitude, on a mound of roasted vellum, stood the centerpiece, two vast moving figures made of ground chicken liver, who hacked at each other with serving knives, screaming in rage and pain at each blow, while the guests standing beneath them applauded and caught falling bits of the combatants on slices of bread. "Ah, I recognize that pair," said the Duke of Queens, pleased that his own researches were paying such a swift reward. "The terrible old gods of fiction, Vidal and Male in their eternal struggle." My Lady Charlotina swept down on them from above, her voluminous skirts bellying out to slow her descent. She accepted kisses and compliments on her outfit, dress, shawl, boots, and veiled wimple, all constructed of translucent pink flesh. "Ham," she explained to them, "flesh of an extinct animal. I've come as a particular book rather than an author. What am I again?" she asked Sweet Orb Mace. "The Smokehouse of Parma. Of course, I'd forgotten. I'm quite distracted, you see. Have you met the real author yet? He's just over there. I'd come with you, but Argenhart Poe is making a new cake to replace the one that Ocala exploded, and he's very upset about having to work so hurriedly." My Lady Charlotina hurtled off across the great tent, making a swift and expert loop halfway to avoid Werther de Goethe's air car, a funeral urn of marble so dark it glowed purple. Sweet Orb Mace lowered her blood-smeared spear as Werther's urn hissed by overhead. Then, as she hurried them toward the guest of honor, said, "It is his birthday, this author. That is in part the reason for the party. Isn't that lovely?" A tiny frown dimpled the Iron Orchid's smooth cheeks. "He looks a bit old to be born only today, if he is a time traveler. Surely even the most primitive of the ancient ones did not have beards like that in infancy. But of course, though I have done the deed once myself, I would not claim to be an expert. It means an anniversary of one's birth also, Velospian informed her. They did not live very long, these dawn agers, and thus they marked the passing of each year with a particular doleful emphasis after they passed into decrepitude at the year 30 or so. He examined the author carefully as they approached, and did not seem to like what he saw very much. All the more reason we should make his celebration festive, suggested the Duke of Queens, stopping to pull up his rings once more, which this time had become tangled in his ringmaster's whip, a segmented tail growing from his lower back. Such brief lives, but such ardor, such enthusiasm. I have seen others who appeared more enthusiastic than this fellow, observed the Iron Orchid quietly, for they had drawn close to the object of their scrutiny. But I do think he looks rather sweet. Ah, said Dr. Velospion. Sweet. The time traveler was standing a bit apart from the nearest guests, a gang of drunken young ruffian novelists dressed in Tolstoy's soldier uniforms, waving long wooden critic bats, watching the ongoing self-destructive struggle of Vidal and male overhead with bemusement. The guest of honor was a bearded, sturdy man dressed in rather nondescript clothing. He alone, gifted with authenticity, seemed to feel no need for costume. Ah, called out the Duke of Queens, we meet again, celebrated scribe. Sweet Orb Mace and I have already had the pleasure of an introduction to you, but please allow me to present the Iron Orchid and Dr. Velospion. Iron Orchid, Doctor, you are in the presence of the very great and renowned Dawn Age fabulist Maxwell Meerkat. As the Iron Orchid made an elaborate scale-clinking curtsy, and Velospion tendered a brief nod of greeting, the author shook his head slowly, like someone not quite awake. Maxwell? No, actually, it's... Please, vaunted Meerkat, no need for modesty. The Duke of Queens turned to share his salutation with the crowd at large. We are honored to have here among us such a fierce, fiery, and yet fundamentally friendly fabulist, the author of such works of undying glory as A Cure for Kansas and A Medicine for Milton Keynes, creator of such magical heroes as Elric and his aged sidekick, Strombringer, also the famously fateful fungus, the Eternal Champignon. And who could ever forget? The Duke paused for a moment, struggling as his shoulder rings slid down and pinned his arms to his side. There are, of course, too many triumphs to mention, he finished, still battling the wayward rings. Huzzah for Maxwell Meerkat! There was a spatter of applause. In truth, that's about all the cities had to offer, the Duke whispered to the Iron Orchid as she helped him loosen the rings and push them back up to his neck. Still, it's nice to give things that personal touch. Thank you, said the author. You're very kind, all of you, but my name's not actually remembered in quite the way you had hoped. The Duke of Queens smiled sadly. Oh, of course not. Of course not. We are rather a post-literary age, I'm afraid. But the fact that you are retained in the memory banks of the cities at all is itself an indicator of your prestige. I was told he claims to a greater posterity than that, said Dr. Velospion crisply. If what I heard earlier is true, Mr. Meerkat, you believe our entire age to be the product of your mind. Well... The bearded man watched Dr. Velospion with a slightly discomforted fascination, as a hiker might regard a snake lying in his path. Well, after a fashion. Certainly I've written about all of you and considered you all to be the pure product of imagination. It's all very strange. I mean, I've never been to this place before, although I've imagined it in some detail. Of course, he said to himself, frowning, I suppose that strictly speaking, I can't really be sure I'm here now. I seem to remember having a nap. Perhaps I'm dreaming this. I think, said Velospion, icily, if you are going to take credit for our existence, you might at least let us believe we are a bit more significant than the byblow of some daydream. I didn't mean it that way, said Meerkat, turning to the others as if worried he had offended them too. God, no, you're all quite spectacular, just as I'd always imagined you being. Lake Billy the Kid. His smile was almost childlike. It's amazing, really. Have all the things I wrote actually happened? He turned to the Iron Orchid. Has your son fallen in love with a woman from the 19th century? You know my son? Jarek Carnelian? Maxwell Meerkat laughed. Of course, I invented him too. He saw the orchid's slightly frosty glance, and his face fell. Or that's how it seems to me. It's really quite a puzzle. I've made up lots of things. It's been my job, you see, but nothing like this has ever happened before. The end of time. It's hard to know where to start. I'd love to meet Lord Jagged, for one thing, actually meet him. Is he here? But why should we believe a word you say? Demanded Velospion, his smile broad but his eyes cold. We have had many claimants, many prophets and lunatics visit us here at the end of time. Ah, yes, that's right. You don't appreciate people talking about Jagged, do you? Meerkat nodded his head sagely. I assure you it is a matter of perfect indifference to me. Dr. Velospion ostentatiously turned his shoulder to the time traveler as more of the inhabitants of the end of time began to gather. Ocala Incarnadine, who was attempting to eat a bowl full of typeworms and lead slugs with his clumsy bare paws and making rather a mess of it, gave a sticky wave to his comrades. Gaff, the horse in tears, was carrying a red pencil and striped in the bloody wheels of a galley slave. Bishop Castle's huge hat flickered through different architectural shapes, one moment a minaret, the next a 68th century purification dormitory. Do you like it? Castle asked the author. It is, of course, a reproduction of the famous Random House. Do not be offended by our wonderfully sharp-tongued Dr. Velospion, the Duke of Queens begged the guest of honor. We are all thrilled to have our author among us. We are grateful that you have deigned to join us. So few creations can say that with certainty. Yes, it is of course very pleasant to meet you, said the Iron Orchid. But although I do not entirely approve of Dr. Velospion's tone, I think his question is valid. Why should we believe that you had anything to do with making us? The author frowned a little, considering. There was a shout of approval from across the tent as Mistress Christia finished Congress with her 99th sales rep and invited the 100th in line to doff his naval uniform and take his turn. I suppose I could tell you something that no one else could know, Meerkat said at last, almost apologetically. I'm not really interested in proving anything, but I can't help feeling at least a little bit that it would be nice to justify myself. I worked very hard on all of you, after all. The Iron Orchid was amused. Tell, then. Not in front of everyone. He drew her aside and whispered in her ear. The orchid's expression, at first one of polite disdain, quickly became something stranger and more complicated. When Meerkat had finished, she looked at him once, drew a glittering fish-skin veil over her delicate features, then vanished from the tent. "Ho, ho!" said the Duke of Queens nervously. "What secrets you must possess, esteemed author of us all." "Please, let's go back to enjoying the party," begged Meerkat. I should never have said anything in the first place. I was just so surprised to find myself here. I'd rather let it drop now. There's so much I want to see." "But you owe us information," declaimed Werther de Goethe, striding forward. The suffering hero of many of his own dramas was naked, clothed head to foot only in shining black ink, with just the whites of his eyes for contrast. "If you are indeed our author, then you owe it to these others to explain to them their pointlessness, their insubstantiality. It is possible none of them, but me, of course, will understand the terrible import, but nevertheless you must try." He turned to the others. "Pointless! I warned you all. Life is not merely bleak, it is false, a mere fiction, devised for the entertainment of spotted, furtive readers we will never even meet." "Speak for yourself," rasped Dr. Velospion. "I am no fiction. If there is any author subtle enough to imagine one such as I, surely it is not this creature." My Lady Charlotina swept down from the ceiling in a long, lazy arc, landing between Velospion and the now clearly uncomfortable author. "What are you all doing to Mr. Morlock?" "No," the author said, "it's not Morlock, it's Meerkat," finished the Duke of Queens. "We are having a bit of spirited discussion about the nature of invention. Quite exciting." Their hostess frowned. "I must admit I never quite understood how it is that you might have invented us, Mr. Morlock, but it is an entertaining conceit. Are you enjoying the party?" "I'm sorry I ever mentioned it," he said, looking a bit shamefaced. "Me being the author, I mean, seems a bit rude now. But it was such a shock to me when I found myself here." "Yes, how did it happen exactly?" asked Dr. Velospion. "You have said nothing about your time machine." "I don't have one. I don't think there is such a thing." The author saw the look on his hosts' faces and quickly added, "In my time, that is. I write stories, made-up stories. Time machines are a common device." "Common?" said Sweet-Orbed Mace, who was combing the last crumbs of male out of Ocala Incarnadine's fur. "But you just said there were no such things." "Common literary devices, inventions. I mean the made-up kind." Meerkat, or Morlock, flushed. "Damn, I'm not explaining myself well." "Granting for a moment that you did invent us," said my Lady Charlotina, "why would you do such a thing?" "Yes," shouted the Platinum Poppy, "and where do you get your ideas?" The author seemed increasingly uncomfortable with the questioning. "It's hard to say exactly where inspiration begins. I might have been exaggerating the changes in my own society, which during my time many people thought were evidence of growing decadence, the end of civilization. I was also gently making fun of some of the types of people I knew." He shrugged. "The fact is, I'm a writer. I make things, and then I use those things to tell stories." "So we are things?" My Lady Charlotina frowned. "I'm not certain I like that very much, Mr. Morlock." He sighed. "I didn't mean it that way." "What did you tell the Iron Orchid?" demanded Dr. Velospion. "She has left, and rather precipitously. Did you threaten her?" "Well, of course not. I told her something only her creator could know. It disturbed her, I suppose." Velospion's eyebrow lifted. "Ah,
Your guest has proved his worth at last, my Lady Charlatina. Now we will have conjuring tricks.
He fixed his chalky face on the visitor. His eyes glittered.
Entertain us, O first mover. Tell my secrets.
The author frowned. I think you're the only person I created at the end of time who is actually knowingly cruel. I suppose I deserve this. Dr. Velospion raised a green exoskeletal hand to the guests who had gathered around them. The ruffian novelists murmuring drunkenly, box-shaped editors, every one wearing his or her own cubicle, Florence Fox in schoolmistress garb accompanied by a crowd of little Dickenses, Lady Voiceless in a chrome-colored jailhouse uniform, her height doubled so she might masquerade as a long sentence. Even the jaunty sales reps, still perspiring faintly from entertaining Mistress Christia, the everlasting concubine, crowded in to watch the proceedings.
This time traveler maintains he has invented us, Dr. Velospion announced. Every one of us, you, Werther, and Mongrove with your overwhelming sorrows, and you too, kindly queens, with your never-ending fashions and fascinations. Even you, my Lady Charlatina, are incomparable hostess of unparalleled taste and hospitality. All of us, we are told, come from this single and unprepossessing head. I ask you, is such a thing possible? Is it reasonable?
My Lady Charlatina rose into the air. I want no part of this. Dr. Velospion, you are coming close to abusing the very hospitality you so recently praised. She floated off, her expression unusually troubled. Dr. Velospion's thin features twisted in what might also almost have been called a smirk.
You have an eager crowd, Mr. Meerkat. Can you not show them a little of your creator's knowledge, or, failing that, your actual creative art? Perhaps you could write a new character for us. Someone interesting to help alleviate the boredom of our two-dimensional imaginary lives. Or it could be you would prefer to create an epic drama for us, the end of the universe so often foretold, a kind of operatic destruction, sparing you the necessity for a considered ending.
If you're going to change things, suggested Sweet Orb Mace wistfully, perhaps you could make me a bit more clever? I don't want, the author began. I like to be born like Jarek was, said someone else from the back of the crowd, perhaps Claire Serrato. That would be nice, I think. Could you do that, Mr. Murdoch? God, said the author, flinching. That's the worst yet. I keep telling you my name is a byword for artistic expression, offered the Duke of Queens gallantly. You are correct, noble novelist, and we are being unfair. It demeans your holy calling, testing you in this way. But
then let us return to the simplest test of all, grated Dr. Velospion. You told the Iron Orchid something she did not like, driving her from the bosom of her friends. Do the same for me.
He drew himself up to his full height, antennae bouncing.
Prove you are my creator. Frighten me in front of all these guests.
There was a long pause. A few in the crowd began to whisper, bored or confused. The author stood and stared back at Dr. Velospion, and it seemed almost as though the two of them fought some silent, unmoving battle. At last, Dr. Velospion began to grin.
You are wishing you could go home and write me out of this story, aren't you?
No, said the bearded time traveler, shaking his head. No, that's not the kind of creator I want to be. You're a nasty little bastard, but I made you that way. It's not your fault, and I can't punish you for it. I should have kept my mouth shut about being the author and just enjoyed myself instead.
He took a deep breath and turned to face the puzzled crowd. You have to be true to what you make. Look, if everything you make is a part of yourself and you fail to treat your own creations respectfully, you're not being true to yourself. He made a self-conscious bow to the pale man dressed in emerald wasp hide. You win, Dr. Velospion, if you choose to see it that way. A few of the editorial assistants, those who had not drowned in gravy, recognized an obvious dramatic climax and gave a ragged, uncertain cheer. Now then, said the author, can we get back to the party? I haven't really had anything to eat yet, and I'd love to try out a power ring, too. Dr. Velospion, instead of being satisfied with his rival's submission, had grown more and more radiantly pale, as though some kind of flame burned beneath his waxy skin. As the author turned away to ask the Duke of Queens something, Velospion suddenly rose a few feet in the air and pointed an accusing finger at him. You! He said in a voice that was nearly a screech, causing most of the dispersing guests to stop in their tracks and swivel around. Who do you think you are? Or more importantly, who should we think you are? His mouth worked for a moment, as though it could not form the shapes necessary to allow suitably disgusted words to emerge. How dare you claim to have invented me? I, Dr. Velospion, in all my devastating subtlety and complexity, my sublime angers, my razor-sharp grudges, my brooding imagination. I am not the product of anyone else. I am not. As you wish, the author said wearily. No, sir, hissed Velospion. It is not as I wish, because what I wish is to prove who is real and who is imaginary. He turned toward his fellow inhabitants at the end of time. Here is the real question. Here is the real question. Can such a thing as an author of us all exist? I think not. Consider yourself, each one of you. Consider your beauty, your imagination, your delicious individuality. Do you believe you sprang from someone else's mind? Actually, offered Hector Jector Pachinko, I did. Mistress Christia made me. You know what I mean, Dr. Velospion snapped. No, I think it is the idea of an author that is fiction. The author himself who is illusionary. What does that mean exactly? Asked the Duke of Queens, frowning. I'm afraid I'm having a bit of trouble following you. Simply this. There can be no such person. Velospion folded thin arms across his chest carapace. This Maxwell, Morlock, Murdoch, Meerkat person cannot exist. Cannot exist? The Duke of Queens looked curiously at the author, who seemed at a loss for words. But the fellow's right there. No, he is not, insisted Dr. Velospion. He turned to the other guests. If he exists, then we are all figments. If he exists, we are mere characters. The end of time itself is only a symbol, an allegory, a metaphor. Do you believe that? Gaff, the horse in tears, raised his red pencil and waved it enthusiastically. Why, if such a preposterous plot were written in my galley, I would force it to walk the plank. Avast! It does seem a bit forcedly metaphysical, said Bishop Castle. I confess I was troubled by the whole idea, but otherwise it's been a very nice party. A few others began to murmur agreement. He does not exist, said Dr. Velospion, a tiny angry red spot on each ivory cheekbone, the only color on his chin, the only color on his skin. He cannot exist. He will not exist.
He does not exist, shouted Sweet Orb Mace, waving Jake Spear's javelin excitedly. Oh, yes, that's good. He does not exist, shouted others, including many who had already forgotten or had never known the subject of the discussion. He does not exist. He will not exist. He cannot exist. The cry swept through the whole party now, echoing to the distant roof and disturbing the sleep of several critic bats hanging upside down from rafters. He does not exist, the crowd screamed happily. The author, eyes wide, turned imploringly to the Duke of Queens. Isn't there anything that can be done? I didn't want. The Duke of Queens looked at him, not without sorrow, and shook his head. You know, I hate to admit it, old man, but Dr. Velospion has a bit of a point. It does all seem a bit unlikely. But happy birthday anyway, Mr. Meerkat. At the Duke's last word, with a barely audible pop, the author suddenly disappeared. In the hours afterward, the very few inhabitants of the end of time who discussed the matter found themselves sharply divided as to what had happened. Most believed that a deluded time traveler had simply been seized by the forces of time, which could never be more than temporarily thwarted, and returned, along with his particular madness, to some earlier era. A few of the more conspiratorial-minded suggested that the author Meerkat had been a creation of one of their more inventive friends, perhaps the party's hostess, my Lady Charlatina, or even, as several suspected, Dr. Velospion himself. But in the immediate aftermath, only the Duke of Queens seemed saddened by the disappearance of the putative author of them all. The Iron Orchid did not return to the party and afterward professed not to remember why she had left so suddenly. The party itself continued on in full, if increasingly chaotic, flow. After all, it would take a great deal more than the unreality of a guest of honor to spoil a party at the end of time. It was only when another week, as people from more conventional eras would reckon things, only after another week had passed, after Trixie Troxie Rowe set fire to a small army of pages whose papery doublets and hose burned astonishingly quickly, and Ocala Incarnadine took on the form of a raging deadline and ate nearly half the remaining guests, that the party was commonly agreed to have ended. It was nearly a month before the last charred page was located and removed by my Lady Charlatina's slaves from the trees along the shores of Lake Billy the Kid, by which time everyone was at another party. And that is the end. I have no idea why my light just suddenly went out. That was weird. Yeah, just went out for no reason. Anyway, so there we are. Thank you for hanging with me. It seemed to me like an appropriately metatextual story to end on before taking a little break. I appreciate your company. There will be more tatting around to come. I promise that. I might even be reading. I really don't know. But I have to think about it a little bit first before I just plunge into another book or something like that. So as I said, please check in with me on Facebook or Twitter, and I will post updates as to what's happening. I think I will definitely take next weekend off, though. So that at least you can feel secure if you're doing something else. That you're not missing me live. And of course, all these things are always available in some kind of recorded format too. So anyway, with that, since it's a little bit after 8, I thank you so much for all the time we've spent together on all the stories we've shared together. As I said, this is not goodbye. This is only au revoir until we meet again, until we see each other again. And that will be pretty soon, very soon, probably. Because I enjoy this too. So anyway, be good to yourselves. Be good to those around you, your loved ones, your friends, your neighbors. And we will all take care of you. And you will all take care of us. And we will all take care of we. And we are all together. There goes my light again. So Take care. Be good. I'll see you real soon. Peace. And from California, good night.